What's going on, Ravens fans? Welcome into the Baltimore Ravens Rundown. My name is Joey Petersen. I am your host. We got a major update on the Ravens search for their next defensive coordinator. But before we get into that news, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I just need 28 brand new die-hard Ravens fans to join us right here at the Ravens Rundown so we can get to 45,000 subscribers. The goal is 50K by the NFL draft. But hey, we got to cross 45 first, and let's do that by today. When it comes to the National Football League, what we talked about a lot this week is the domino effect, right? One coach gets hired here, that affects what happens for the Baltimore Ravens down the line. One coach gets fired there, that affects what happens to a lot of teams down the line. That's just kind of the way the NFL is. It's one massive domino effect, especially during this time of the year when so many coaches are getting hired, fired, interviews all across the league. Well, it is no different this morning, unfortunately. That's what the big update is for the defensive coordinator search. Jim Leonhard has officially accepted the job as the Bills' new DC under Joe Brady. And this is big for Baltimore because they had an in-person interview with Jim Leonhard. It was basically between Buffalo and Baltimore for where he wanted to land next, and he chose New York. I'm not going to tell you I'm surprised by this. In fact, when we talked about him interviewing, I believe it was Wednesday morning when we hit that video, maybe even on Thursday morning, I told you straight up, look, I've got a feeling that he's going to choose Buffalo. Because if you go to the Bills as a defensive coordinator, that is your defense. You are the one calling the plays. If you come to Baltimore, it's not your defense. It's Jesse Minter's defense. It's Jesse Minter calling the plays. Now, you still have a massive, massive role in what the defense does, how it looks, and you are a big, big part of that picture. Just as big as anybody, right? Just as big as Jesse Minter is, obviously, but it's still his defense. He's still the one calling the plays. You go to Buffalo, that's yours. You're the play caller. That's your side of the football, right? It's unfortunate. But I've got a feeling Baltimore's going to be able to adjust and bounce back in a pretty solid way. Because at the end of the day, you got the guy in the building that you need in the building to have defensive success, and that is Jesse Minter, right? Like, I would have loved to have Jim Leonhard. Jim Leonhard would have been a nice little cherry on top, but you already got the ice cream, right? This is going to be Jesse Minter's defense. Just because Jim Leonhard is not the defensive coordinator, it's not going to change much, right? It might change a little bit. He's a great defensive mind. He would have helped a lot. But at the end of the day, you've got Minter, and that's what matters to me. And like when you're looking at it from a Jim Leonhard perspective, how would coming to Baltimore be anything different than a title change and probably a pay change than what he's doing in Denver? Like in Denver, he's the pass game coordinator. He's the assistant head coach, but Vance Joseph is the defensive coordinator, right? And so coming to Baltimore, it's like he'd step up to be the DC, but in that analogy, it's like Vance Joseph is still the head coach. So it's unfortunate, but I understand it. I think Steve Clinkscale is still a name to keep an eye on. He's been a name that I've been talking about since the very, very beginning. In fact, before Jesse Minter was even hired, I was talking about Steve Clinkscale because it just makes sense, right? They've been together at so many different stops. I believe they were together in Cincinnati, right? They were together in Michigan. Clinkscale was the defensive backs coach. Then he was the co-defensive coordinator under Jesse Minter. And then they came to Los Angeles together. So they've been at each other's spots since 2022. So for the last 4 seasons. There we go. Quick math. And at the end of the day, like, he knows the scheme. That, to me, has always been the most important thing when getting a defensive coordinator in with Baltimore is just go get a guy who knows the way Jesse Minter likes these guys to be coached. Go get a guy who knows the way this defense runs, knows the in and outs. He spent 4 years in it. That's great to me. That is great. In fact, there's part of me that would like that almost even a little bit more than Jim Leonhard. Now, do I think Jim Leonhard has a better future in defense in the National Football League than Steve Clinkscale does? Yeah, I do. But Steve's already got a leg up on Leonhard because he's been working with Minter. Like, you wouldn't have to teach him anything. And so, give him the title of DC. He's got a really important job, but he knows what everything needs to look like. He knows the exact way that Jesse Minter likes to prepare. He likes to game plan. He likes to watch film. He knows all of that. And I think that'd be a pretty big benefit. We're going to talk about Declan Doyle in a second. But again, speaking of Minter, do not forget our Minter is coming. Hoodies and T-shirts are still for sale. That link is going to be in the comments and description of today's video. Chatsports.com/Minter. You can get yours today. Hoodies, T-shirts, and if you want to get them both, you can save $10 on that order. Okay, so again, chatsports.com/Minter. Super easy, but you don't even need to type that in. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. Our first ever merchandise right here on the channel, so go take advantage of it. All right, let's talk about Declan Doyle, because I think the longer that time goes on, the more excited I am about this hire. I'm not worried at all the fact that he's 29 years old, right? Like, I feel like some people are freaking out about that a little bit. You know, he's the same age as Lamar Jackson. I don't care. If anything, that's going to help him be able to relate to Lamar Jackson a lot more than guys like Todd Monken and John Harbaugh did, who are in their mid-60s, right? Lamar Jackson is a 29-year-old who grew up in South Florida, and like I think 29-year-old Declan Doyle is going to be able to be a little bit more relatable to him because they're the same age, okay? I don't think there's going to be a weird like power dynamic there. I think that they're going to be able to look at this thing as like, hey, look, this is us together. This is our defense. Now, of course, Declan Doyle is going to be run the show, but Doyle needs Lamar just as much as Lamar needs Doyle, right? And so I'm not worried about the Lamar Jackson effect about this. Not one bit, okay? I am excited about what the future of this offense looks like. I love the way that you got an innovator. You got a strong defensive mind. You got somebody that was really highly coveted. I mean, the Eagles wanted to interview him, right? Fortunately, he turned down the Eagles' job. Another team reportedly wanted to interview him as well. We showed you this quote from Brad Briggs yesterday, but that team kind of got word that, you know, Declan Doyle would most likely turn down that opportunity the same way that he did with the Eagles. And so my thought is maybe it was an offensive-minded head coach that he didn't want to work for. Same in Philadelphia. But Declan Doyle saw the opportunity to work with Lamar, come work with Derrick Henry, and come be the offensive play caller. What you can expect, okay? Outside zone runs from under center. Okay, I think you're going to see a little bit more under center than you saw with Todd Monken, which I don't think is a bad thing, right? I like a little bit of pro-style offense mixed back into here. A lot of pre-snap motion. Okay, you're going to see a ton of that, which I think is super, super beneficial, right? It's a little bit of that like Mike McDaniel influence of like there's always guys moving. And Todd Monken ran motion a decent bit. It's not like he was motionless. However, you're just going to see more of it under Doyle. Screens, RPOs, and maybe some trick plays sprinkled in there every now and then. So that's kind of what you should expect when it comes to Doyle. But man, expect a guy who can already step in this role and know everything he needs to. Okay, I think people are worried about that. The only thing I'm worried about is the actual play calling on game day part of it. Because that he's never done. Now, he's done that in a sense. You know, I know he's watching those games along Ben, and he's probably chiming in on play calls and things like that. Ultimately, Ben is the decision maker in that sense. But like everything else for preparing for a week of practice, of game planning, he's already done that. That was his role in Chicago. I think sometime next week early, I think it'd be fun to kind of dive into his role exactly in the interviews that he's done. And people asked about his age, to go back to that. He's like, man, I've been coaching for a decade. So it doesn't feel like I'm as young as I am, right? He's been coaching since 2016. That's when he became a student assistant at Iowa. I probably was coaching a little bit before that, but that's just the last time Wikipedia goes back to it. And so, like, you get some guys who they play all throughout college, right? And then they get their first coaching gig the year after they graduate. He got his sophomore year of college at Iowa, which is another cool thing Tyler Linderbaum connection. They would have crossed paths at Iowa. Hopefully, that'll be a little bit helpful in getting Tyler Linderbaum back in the fold of things. Okay, that's going to do it for today's show. We'll have another video out later today. It'll be a pre-cut from earlier this week. So hope you enjoyed that. We'll be talking Lamar trade rumors. Then tomorrow we got my first mock draft. Probably a coaching at home as well. So stay tuned. Stick by the channel. And we'll see you later.